Hey there, and welcome back to Sleep History for You. Tonight, we're embarking on an extraordinarily long, incredibly detailed journey into the foundational myths of ancient Greece, specifically focusing on the colossal figures known as the Titans. We're not going to rush. We're going to take our time, drifting slowly through the very origins of existence, letting each detail unfold like a forgotten dream. So, settle in, find that comfortable spot, and let's begin our descent into the primordial mists. Our story, or rather the very beginning of all stories, doesn't start with gods or heroes, but with an absence, a profound void, a chasm so immense and formless that it defies conventional understanding. This was chaos. Not chaos in the sense of disorder or confusion, as we often use the word today, but rather an abyssal expanse, an immeasurable, gaping maw. Imagine, if you can, a space before space, a time before time, a boundless, dark, and utterly silent emptiness. It was the absolute origin, the primal state from which everything else would eventually unfurl. Picture a vast, unending darkness. Not the darkness of a moonless night, which is merely the absence of light against a familiar backdrop, but a darkness that is everything, yet is nothing. A profound, consuming blackness without depth or dimension, without up or down, without beginning or end. There were no stars, no nebulae, no distant galaxies swirling in the inky black. There was no light to perceive such things, nor anything to perceive them with. It was an utter void, silent and cold, yet pregnant with the potential for everything that would ever be. Scholars and philosophers in ancient Greece pondered chaos not just as a mythological starting point, but as a deep philosophical concept. It represented the ultimate beginning, the unformed mass, the primordial raw material from which the cosmos eventually cohered. It was the infinite possibility, an endless ocean of non-being, somehow containing the blueprints for being within its unfathomable depths. It didn't think, it didn't feel, it simply was an eternal, boundless expanse of nothingness, waiting for the first whisper of form. Within this unfathomable void, within the deep, quiet, encompassing emptiness of chaos, the very first stirrings began. Not a violent burst, nor a sudden flash, but an incredibly slow, almost imperceptible process. Think of it as the geological formation of a mountain range, but infinitely slower, more profound, and far grander in its scale. From this profound emptiness, out of the nothingness that defined chaos, the first entities began spontaneously to emerge. Not born of parents, not crafted by hands, but simply appearing. The first of these primordial entities, the very first thing to give form to the formless, was Gaia. She was the earth itself. Imagine, if you will, the slow coagulation of matter within that infinite void. Not a rapid assembly, but a gradual, deliberate solidifying. Picture particles, infinitesimally small, beginning to coalesce, drawing together with an unseen, unheard gravitational pull. Over eons, these particles would form dust, then pebbles, then rocks, then mighty mountains, all within the silent embrace of the void. Gaia wasn't just part of the earth. She was the earth. Her skin was the soil, the fertile ground underfoot. Her bones were the mighty mountains, rising in slow, majestic grandeur. Her veins were the winding rivers and the subterranean streams, carving paths through her very being. Her breath was the gentle breeze that would one day rustle through nascent forests and the powerful gales that would sweep across vast plains. She emerged as a solid, fertile, life-giving presence, a stark, grounding reality in the boundless expanse of chaos. Imagine the feeling of emerging from absolute nothingness into being. Gaia was immense, warm, and comforting. She was the foundation, the very ground upon which all future life and drama would unfold. She was the mother of all, destined to give birth to many and to support countless others. Her very essence was life, fertility, and stability. In her, the universe found its anchor, its solid core. She provided the bedrock for existence, a tangible presence where before there had been only endless vacancy. Simultaneously, or perhaps in the same slow, deliberate unfurling, another profound entity emerged from the depths of chaos, Tartarus. While Gaia represented the solid, life-giving surface, Tartarus was her antithesis, yet intimately connected. He was the deepest, darkest abyss beneath the earth. If Gaia was the ground you stood on, Tartarus was the unfathomable chasm below that ground, extending into an eternal gloom. Envision a pit, not merely a hole in the ground, but a void within a void, a place of utter, suffocating darkness, colder and more silent than chaos itself, if such a thing were possible. Tartarus was a dungeon, a prison, a place of torment and inescapable confinement. Even before there were any beings to imprison or torment, it was the ultimate bottom, the absolute rock bottom of existence. Its depths were said to be so profound that an anvil dropped from the surface of the earth would fall for 9 days and 9 nights before reaching its floor. The air in Tartarus, if one could speak of air in such a place, would be heavy, thick with despair and the weight of absolute finality. No light could penetrate its endless gloom. No sound could escape its suffocating silence. It was a realm of perpetual shadows, a cold, desolate vastness lying eternally beneath the vibrant potential of Gaia. Tartarus existed not just as a place, but as a powerful primordial being, embodying the very concept of incarceration and cosmic despair. And then, alongside Gaia and Tartarus, the third of these foundational beings came into existence, Eros. Not the playful, winged Cupid of later Roman mythology, but a primordial, fundamental force. Eros was the principle of attraction, of desire, of procreation, and of the creative impulse itself. He was the irresistible force that brought things together, that sparked connection and union, that compelled existence to beget more existence. Imagine a subtle, almost imperceptible warmth spreading through the cold emptiness. A gentle, compelling whisper that encouraged disparate elements to seek each other out. Eros was the invisible thread connecting all things, the inherent urge for creation to propagate. He wasn't a physical being in the same way Gaia or Tartarus were, but rather an omnipresent fundamental energy. He was the vital spark, the driving force behind all future generation and manifestation. Without Eros, there would be no coming together, no blending, no birth. Gaia would remain a solitary mass, Tartarus an isolated chasm. It was Eros who provided the impetus for the universe to move beyond mere existence and into the realm of interaction, union, and proliferation. He was the quiet, persistent pulse of life, the foundational desire that fueled the unfolding of the cosmos. He made the immense leap from nothingness to somethingness, not just possible, but inevitable. So, from the boundless, dark, and silent expanse of chaos, these three fundamental entities emerged. Gaia, the solid, fertile earth; Tartarus, the deep, dark, inescapable abyss; and Eros, the primordial force of desire and generation. They were the very first principles, the groundwork upon which the entire mythological universe would be built, slowly, deliberately, and with immense cosmic gravitas. The stage was set, not with a flourish, but with the quiet, profound emergence of being from non-being. The universe had taken its first deep, silent breath. The universe, having taken its first deep, silent breath with the emergence of Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros, was still an immense, largely unformed canvas of possibilities. From that same boundless, dark expanse of chaos, two more profound and ancient entities began to unfurl their being, gradually taking shape in the profound quietude. These were Nyx, the primordial embodiment of night, and Erebus, the deep, impenetrable darkness. Imagine Nyx emerging as an all-encompassing cloak, a boundless veil of deepest indigo, stretching across what would eventually become the heavens. She wasn't merely the absence of light. She was night itself, a sentient, powerful force. Her presence brought with it a profound stillness, a hushed reverence. The air, if it existed in such a rudimentary form, would have been heavy with the solemnity of her dominion. There was no moon, no stars, only her vast, silent presence, an eternal twilight that preceded any form of true illumination. She was ancient, mysterious, and possessed a quiet, immense power that even the later gods would respect and fear. Alongside Nyx, or perhaps as an inseparable part of her very essence, arose Erebus. He was the tangible, suffocating darkness that filled the spaces beneath Nyx, permeating the nether regions of the cosmos. If Nyx was the starry, or pre-starry, sky at night, Erebus was the thick, lightless gloom that clung to the nascent earth, filling every cavern, every shadow, every unseen recess. He was the darkness of the underworld, the shadowy realm through which the spirits of the dead would one day pass. His presence added a layer of profound opacity, a chilling, still quiet to the emerging cosmic landscape. The union of Nyx and Erebus was not one of physical embrace in the way later beings would couple. It was a more subtle, profound intertwining of their very essences. From this union, from the deepest night and the most profound darkness, a new wave of primordial beings began to manifest, bringing with them the very concepts of light and its accompanying day. First came Aether, the shimmering, brilliant upper air, the pure, luminous substance that filled the celestial realms. Imagine the slow, almost hesitant arrival of light, not as a sudden flash, but as an ethereal glow, like the first faint hint of dawn appearing on an infinite horizon. Aether was the radiant, clear, unpolluted light of the heavens, a stark contrast to the enveloping darkness from which he sprang. He represented the bright, ethereal sky above the clouds, untainted by earthly mists or shadows. His presence was like a gentle, warming breath, pushing back against the primeval chill. And with Aether, his luminous sister, Hemera, emerged. She was the personification of day. Imagine her as the slow, gradual unveiling of the world, a soft, deliberate lightning that chased away the lingering shadows. Hemera brought definition, visibility, and a sense of progression. She was the warmth on the nascent surface of Gaia, the clarity that allowed for the first perception of forms and outlines. Her arrival meant the slow, rhythmic turning of the cosmic wheel, the inception of a cycle that would forever govern existence. So, the universe now experienced its first grand cosmic rhythm. Nyx and Erebus would recede, giving way to Aether and Hemera, only to return once more. This was the dawn of primeval day and night, an infinitely slow, majestic dance of light and shadow. The sky was not yet fully formed, nor the sun placed, but the concept of light replacing darkness, and darkness giving way to light, had now been established. Imagine this cycle unfolding over immense periods, not hours, but eons, each transition a profound, subtle shift in the fabric of nascent reality. The world was beginning to breathe, in and out, with the coming and going of these primordial forces. With the foundational elements now in place, particularly the immense, fertile presence of Gaia, the earth itself, the stage was set for the next monumental act of creation. Gaia, as the very essence of generation, did not require a consort to bring forth her earliest, most direct offspring. She generated them from herself, a profound act of auto-creation, embodying the raw, untamed power of the primordial earth. From her vast, nurturing body, Gaia first brought forth Ouranos, the sky. Imagine a slow, magnificent rising. Picture the very surface of the earth, the nascent mountains and plains beginning to stretch upwards, to arch and expand, forming a vast, overarching dome above Gaia. Ouranos was the heavens, the celestial expanse that stretched from horizon to horizon, forever embracing his mother Gaia. He was born as her equal in size, a fitting canopy for her immense form. His emergence was not a violent tearing, but a gentle, majestic separation. The heavy, dark atmosphere that had perhaps lingered close to Gaia's surface slowly lifted, thinning and clearing, revealing the profound blue that would come to define the sky. Imagine the feeling of this separation. The earth below, grounded and solid, and the sky above, immense and ethereal, stretching endlessly upwards. Uranus was a shimmering star-dusted, though the stars themselves were yet to be placed by later deities, expanse, a living, breathing dome that held the entirety of the fledgling cosmos within its embrace. He embodied the vastness of the celestial sphere, the endless blue during Hemera's reign, and the deep, silent expanse when Nyx held sway. Uranus was the majestic, unyielding vault of heaven, his skin the very firmament. He was the boundary, the overarching structure that contained all that would exist between himself and Gaia. His arrival marked the creation of a distinct celestial realm, separate from, yet eternally connected to, the terrestrial. The primordial mists and unformed air began to take on definition, forming clouds that would one day drift across his face, and winds that would sweep through his airy domain. Almost simultaneously, or in a continuum of Gaia's self-generative power, she also brought forth Pontus, the sea. Imagine the lower, deeper depressions and valleys across Gaia's surface beginning to fill. Not with rain, for that cycle was not yet established, but with the very essence of water welling up from within her, immense, salty, and profound. Pontus was the primordial sea, a vast, restless body of water that covered a significant portion of Gaia's surface, eternally heaving and sighing. Picture the slow, deliberate filling of these great basins. The water, at first still and glassy, gradually began to stir, to ripple, and then to surge. Pontus was dark, deep, and mysterious, a realm of immense, untapped power. He encompassed all the oceans, the seas, and even the subterranean waters that flowed within Gaia's depths. His surface would one day reflect Uranus, creating a mirror image of the heavens. But for now, he was a dark, churning, immense presence, a watery realm of profound antiquity. The air above Pontus would have been cool and moist, perhaps carrying the faint, briny scent of primeval salt. The rhythmic lapping of nascent waves against Gaia's shores would have been the first true sound beyond the silent emergence of beings. Pontus was a restless entity, a liquid embrace around the solid form of Gaia, carving out coastlines, shaping the very edges of the landmasses. He represented the wild, untamed aspects of the deep, a powerful counterpoint to the stability of the earth. So, now we have Gaia, the solid earth, Uranus, the vast, arching sky, and Pontus, the deep, restless sea. And it was between Gaia and Ouranos, this magnificent mother and her celestial son, that the most profound and momentous connection was forged. Uranus, the sky, stretched out perpetually above Gaia, the earth, perpetually embracing her. His presence enveloped her, pressed down upon her, and within this constant, intimate embrace, the seeds of all future existence were sown. Their union was cosmic, powerful, and deeply significant, for from this primal coupling, the majestic, formidable generation of the Titans would begin to unfold, forever changing the face of the nascent cosmos. From the profound, ceaseless embrace of Gaia, the fertile earth, and Uranus, the vast, encompassing sky, a magnificent, formidable generation began to stir within the cosmic womb. This was the birth of the Titans, the very first pantheon, beings of immense power and presence, embodying fundamental forces of the nascent universe. There were 12 of them, 6 male and 6 female, and their emergence marked a crucial transition from the purely primordial, abstract forces to more defined, albeit still colossal, deities. Let us introduce them slowly, one by one, allowing their ancient forms to take shape in our minds. First came Oceanus, the eldest of the male Titans, the immense, encircling river that flowed around the entire disk of the flat earth. Imagine a river not merely as a channel of water, but as a living, conscious entity so vast that it bordered all land, a never-ending current separating the mortal world from the mystical realms beyond. His waters were fresh, not salty like Pontus's deep seas, and he was the source of all rivers, springs, and wells. His presence was one of steady, relentless flow, a quiet, powerful majesty, governing the cyclical nature of water throughout the world. He was the boundary, the eternal current, a calm, yet immeasurably strong force. Then, there was Kus, often associated with the axis of heaven around which the constellations revolved, representing intelligence and foresight. Picture him as a being of deep, quiet contemplation, his gaze fixed upon the slow, majestic turning of the cosmic spheres. He embodied the intellectual prowess, the questioning mind, and the profound, silent wisdom that observes the intricate patterns of the universe. His presence was one of profound thought, a serene understanding of the cosmic order. Next, we encounter Kreis, a titan whose name often links him to flocks and constellations, or even the rams that guided the stars. Imagine him as a sturdy, enduring figure, perhaps with a quiet, grounding energy. He was connected to the stable, foundational elements of the earth, a steady presence amidst the more volatile forces. His essence was one of steadfastness, an unmoving pillar in the unfolding drama of creation. Following him was Hyperion, the titan of light and observation. He was often called the High One, or the one who goes above. Imagine his form radiating a soft, golden glow, not the blinding intensity of the sun, for that was yet to come, but an inherent diffused luminosity. He was the one who observed the heavens and the earth, the first to bring the concept of light as a distinct entity, allowing for visual clarity. His presence brought with it a sense of watchful awareness, a gentle illumination over the emerging landscape. Then came Iapetus, a titan whose name is often associated with the concept of wounding or piercing, and who would later be known as the father of Prometheus, Epimetheus, Atlas, and Menetius. He represented the more forceful, perhaps even violent, aspects of the primordial world. Imagine him as a figure of raw, untamed strength, a powerful and imposing presence, embodying the potential for both creation and destruction inherent in the early cosmos. And finally, among the male titans, the youngest yet most ambitious was Cronus. He was the titan of time, harvest, and destiny, though his dominion over time would be less about its smooth passage and more about its cyclical, devouring nature. Picture him as a powerful, cunning figure, perhaps with a gaze that held both ambition and a chilling foresight. He was strong, decisive, and from his very beginning carried a destiny that would forever alter the course of the universe. He would hold the future of the cosmos in his hands, often represented with a sickle, a tool of both harvest and, as we shall see, a far more sinister purpose. Now, let us turn to the 6 formidable female titans, the Titanides. First, Theia, the titaness of sight, glitter, and gleam. She was the one who endowed gold, silver, and other precious gems with their brilliant luster, and bestowed upon the eyes their ability to see. Imagine her as a radiant being, her very form shimmering with an inner light, reflecting the beauty of the nascent world. She embodied the preciousness of light, the wonder of vision, and the inherent sparkle found in the deep earth. Then came Rhea, a titaness closely associated with fertility, motherhood, and the wild mountainous aspects of the earth. Imagine her as a nurturing, yet powerfully wild, presence. She was often depicted surrounded by lions, reflecting her untamed primal nature. Rhea was destined to be a mother of great significance, a fierce protector, and a figure of profound sorrow and strength. Next, we have Themis, the titaness of divine law, order, and justice. She was the embodiment of what was right and proper, the guiding principle of cosmic order. Imagine her as a serene, wise figure, her presence radiating a calm authority. She brought structure and ethical boundaries to the raw, emerging world, ensuring that even in primordial chaos, a sense of rightness could eventually prevail. She was the very foundation of societal and cosmic law. Following her was Mnemosyne, the titaness of memory. She represented the vast reservoir of all knowledge, experience, and remembrance. Imagine her as a quiet, thoughtful being, her mind holding the countless threads of everything that had ever been or would ever be. She was the mother of the muses, and her domain was crucial for the recording and transmission of stories, history, and inspiration. Without Mnemosyne, the universe would be a fleeting, forgotten moment. Then there was Phoebe, the titaness associated with the moon, prophetic intellect, and the Oracle of Delphi. Imagine her as a luminous, ethereal figure, her wisdom profound and her insights piercing. She embodied the gentler, more mystic light, the reflective glow of the night sky, and the deep, intuitive understanding of fate and destiny. Her connection to prophecy made her a figure of quiet, significant power. And finally, Tethys, the titaness of the fresh water, the nourishing mother of rivers, springs, and clouds. She was the consort of Oceanus, and together they would beget thousands of river gods and ocean nymphs. Imagine her as a flowing, nurturing presence, her essence intertwined with the life-giving waters that sustained the world. She embodied the generative power of fresh water, the continuous flow that brought life and sustenance to Gaia's surface. These were the 12 original titans, magnificent and formidable, each embodying a fundamental aspect of the nascent cosmos. They were the children of Gaia and Ouranos, a cosmic family that, though powerful, would soon find itself embroiled in a terrible internal conflict. But the union of Gaia and Ouranos, immense as it was, did not stop at the creation of the Titans. From their continuing embrace, other, far more terrifying beings were also born. Uranus, the sky, found himself filled with growing fear and revulsion at the appearance of these next sets of children. Children whose monstrous forms struck terror into his celestial heart. First came the Cyclopes. There were 3 of them. Brontes, whose name means thunderer, Sterops, the lightning giver, and Argus, the bright one. Imagine them as colossal beings, each possessing a single, immense, gleaming eye set in the center of their forehead. Their bodies were immense, hewn from the very rock and earth of their mother, their muscles like knotted mountains. Their voices would have rumbled like distant storms, their footsteps shaking the very ground. They were not malicious by nature, but their raw, untamed power and their fearsome appearance were unsettling to Uranus. They were master craftsmen, destined to forge the most powerful weapons for the gods. But at this early stage, they were simply beings of immense, single-minded force. Their cyclopean eyes glowed with an internal fire, reflecting their inherent connection to the raw elemental power of the earth and sky. Following the Cyclopes, and even more terrifying in their monstrous aspect, were the Hesatonchires, or the hundred-handed ones. There were also 3 of these colossal beings: Briareus, also known as Aeson, Taurus, and Gyges. Imagine creatures of truly staggering scale, each possessing not just 1 head, but 50, and not 2 arms, but 100 mighty limbs. Their bodies were massive, like entire mountain ranges brought to life. Their skin thick and rough as ancient bedrock. Their 100 hands could grasp and throw enormous boulders with incredible force, shaking the very foundations of the world. Each of their 50 heads would have borne a unique, fearsome expression. Their combined voices a cacophony of thunderous roars. Their appearance alone was enough to fill Uranus with dread. They represented an untamed, primal power, a brute force that he could not comprehend or control. Their very existence felt like a threat to his celestial dominion, a grotesque perversion of the beauty he perceived in his earlier Titan children. The sheer enormity of their forms, the multitude of their limbs and heads, was a sight that filled the primordial sky with profound revulsion. He saw not children, but monstrous engines of destruction, capable of unimaginable chaos. And so, the emerging cosmos, having witnessed the birth of the magnificent Titans, now also bore witness to the terrifying forms of the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires. This disparity in his offspring would fuel Uranus's paranoia, leading to a decision that would forever scar the Earth and set in motion the beginning of the end of his own supreme, yet tyrannical, reign. The gentle, enduring embrace between Gaia and Uranus was beginning to sour, overshadowed by the fear and resentment of the celestial father. The quiet, profound unfolding of creation was giving way to the first whispers of cosmic discord. The whispers of cosmic discord that had begun to stir in the nascent universe soon escalated into a deep guttural rumble of tyranny. Uranus, the vast, encompassing sky, found his initial awe and wonder for his offspring replaced by a consuming fear. His celestial mind, once filled with the serene expanse of the heavens, became clouded with paranoia, a chilling dread that his own children, particularly the formidable and monstrous ones, would rise up to challenge his supreme authority, just as he himself had risen from the void. This fear, ancient and irrational, began to fester within him, distorting his perception and hardening his celestial heart. He looked upon the Cyclopes Brontes, Stirrups, and Arges with their single, powerful eyes and their immense, smithing hands, and saw not potential allies or skilled artisans, but a latent threat. Their raw, elemental power, their ability to manipulate thunder and lightning, seemed to him an affront to his own celestial dominion. Their sheer, unbridled strength felt like a mockery of his authority. And when his gaze fell upon the Hecatonchires Briareus, Cottus, and Gyges, with their 50 heads and 100 powerful hands each, his fear morphed into absolute revulsion. He saw not children of his own flesh and the fertile earth, but grotesque aberrations, monstrous engines of destruction whose colossal forms and untamed might threaten to rend the very fabric of the cosmos. Their every movement, every shift of their ponderous bulk, seemed to echo with the potential for unimaginable chaos and violence. Uranus, blinded by this profound dread and haunted by the specter of a prophecy perhaps yet unspoken, made a terrible, cruel decision. He resolved to suppress these terrifying offspring, to remove them from the light of the nascent world, and to contain their perceived threat. With a will as vast and unyielding as the sky itself, he began to force them back. He seized the Cyclopes, one by one, with an unseen but immense celestial grip. Imagine the vast, overarching sky pressing down, contracting, enveloping his giant sons. The air would have grown heavy, thick with the struggle, the faint, desperate roars of Brontes, Stirrups, and Arges muffled as they were inexorably pushed downwards, forced into the deepest chasms of their mother. Then, with a chilling, determined force, Uranus cast them into Tartarus, the deepest, most abyssal pit of the underworld, the very entity that had emerged from chaos alongside Gaia herself. Picture their descent, a long, terrifying fall through endless gloom, past layers of nascent rock and primordial darkness. The air growing heavier, colder, the pressure increasing with every league. Tartarus, already a place of suffocating void, now became a living prison. Its walls were of bronze, it was said, and its foundations stretched deeper than the roots of the earth. Within its depths, no light could penetrate, no sound could escape. The Cyclopes, once bathed in the raw energy of the cosmos, were now plunged into an eternal, lightless torment. Their immense strength useless against the boundless might of Uranus and the inescapable confines of the abyss. And then, with the same unyielding cruelty, Uranus turned his attention to the Hecatonchires. Their sheer size and multitude of limbs made the task even more daunting. Yet Uranus was resolute in his tyranny. He wrestled with each of them, his celestial strength overwhelming their brute force. The primordial earth would have trembled with these titanic struggles, faint tremors rippling across Gaia's surface. Finally, with a monumental exertion of his power, Uranus managed to subdue Briareus, Cottus, and Gyges, forcing them down into the very same suffocating darkness. They too were cast into Tartarus, their 100 hands flailing ineffectually against the overwhelming force, their 50 heads bellowing cries of rage and despair that were swiftly swallowed by the crushing silence of the abyss. There they lay, bound and imprisoned in the deepest reaches of the underworld, their monstrous forms now shrouded in perpetual night, their immense power rendered inert by the vastness of their prison. They became prisoners of an eternal gloom, their suffering a constant, silent testament to Uranus's fear and cruelty. This act of profound tyranny had an immediate and agonizing impact on Gaia. the Cyclopes and the Brachian when the Whitened. Hecatonchires were her children, born from her very being. When Uranus cast them into Tartarus, he was, in effect, thrusting her beloved offspring back into her own body. Imagine the earth itself groaning in pain. Gaia felt the immense weight of her children pressing down from within her depths, their agony echoing through her very core. She was a mother, nurturing and fertile, but now she was also a living prison, her vast being stretched and tormented by the weight and despair of her incarcerated sons. A grief was immeasurable, a profound, silent sorrow that permeated the nascent world. Her fertile plains felt heavy, her mountains seemed to ache, but her sorrow was quickly joined by a simmering rage. Uranus, her husband, her son, her celestial canopy, had turned against their shared offspring, inflicting unimaginable suffering upon them, and, by extension, upon her. The constant, loving embrace of Uranus now felt like an oppressive, suffocating weight, a symbol of his tyranny rather than his affection. Gaia bore this pain in silence for a time, her vast, ancient being seething with righteous anger and maternal despair. But the torment of her children could not be ignored. The muffled roars from Tartarus, though unheard by most, reverberated through her very being, a constant reminder of Uranus's injustice. She knew that this tyranny could not stand. The primordial order, the delicate balance of creation, had been shattered by Uranus's selfish fear. Slowly, deliberately, from the deep wellspring of her grief and fury, Gaia began to whisper. Her voice, a low, resonant rumble that echoed through the very bedrock of the earth, reached out to her remaining children, the Titans. She spoke of Uranus's cruelty, of the unbearable suffering of their monstrous brethren, trapped in the lightless gloom of Tartarus. She spoke of the constant, oppressive weight of Uranus, his jealous possessiveness, and his fear that prevented any true flourishing or freedom. The Titans listened, their colossal forms shifting uneasily. They were powerful, magnificent, but they had also known Uranus's overwhelming might, his towering presence that held them in check. The idea of rising against their father, the very sky itself, filled them with a profound, chilling dread. They were still young in the cosmic sense, their powers vast but perhaps not yet fully understood, and the thought of open rebellion against the supreme ruler of the cosmos was terrifying. There was a palpable fear, a collective shudder among them. Oceanus, with his serene flow, was hesitant. Cos and Crius, with their steady natures, balked at such a drastic action. Hyperion, the observer, saw the immense difficulty of such a task. Iapetus, though embodying raw strength, was perhaps too impetuous to lead such a nuanced rebellion. None dared to step forward, to openly defy their formidable father. The air was thick with their apprehension, the vast new world holding its breath. But one among them, the youngest of the male Titans, had listened with a different kind of intensity. This was Cronus, the Titan of time, harvest, and destiny. He was ambitious, cunning, and perhaps possessed a colder, more calculating nature than his siblings. As Gaia spoke of the injustice, of the suffering, of the stifling embrace of Uranus, Cronus felt a surge of resolve, mingled with a clear, icy ambition. He saw not just a call to righteous vengeance, but an opportunity to claim the supreme power for himself, to end Uranus's reign and establish a new cosmic order. He stepped forward, his colossal form casting a long shadow across the primeval landscape. His voice, when he spoke, was low but firm, cutting through the fearful silence of his siblings. "Mother," he declared, "I will undertake this deed. I will avenge our suffering brethren and free you from this crushing burden." Gaia, seeing the fierce determination in her youngest son's eyes, knew that he was the one. Her sorrow and rage, which had simmered within her for so long, now found a champion. From the very core of her being, from the primordial essence of the earth itself, she began to forge a weapon. It was not a weapon of war as mortals would conceive it, but a tool of cosmic consequence. She extracted a mighty vein of adamantine from her deepest recesses. Imagine this adamantine not as a mere metal, but as a substance of incredible, unyielding hardness. A divine material imbued with the very essence of the Earth's ancient strength and resilience. It was sharp, gleaming with a dark metallic sheen, and impossibly strong, capable of cleaving through anything. Slowly, deliberately, with immense care and primordial power, Gaia fashioned this adamantine into a great curved sickle. Imagine its edge, honed to an impossible keenness, reflecting no light, but rather absorbing it. A blade of profound gravity. Its handle, perhaps rough-hewn from the same adamantine, or a darker, heavier stone, fitted perfectly into the grasp of a titan. This sickle was not just a tool. It was an instrument of cosmic revolution, forged from the suffering of the Earth and the ambition of its youngest son. When it was complete, Gaia presented it to Cronus. The moment was heavy with destiny. The sickle, cold and sharp, gleamed faintly in the eternal twilight that still often dominated the nascent world, a silent promise of the violent act to come. She explained her plan, detailing how Cronus could ambush Uranus, how he could finally end the oppressive embrace that suffocated her and imprisoned their children. The weight of the world, and indeed of the nascent cosmos, rested on Cronus's shoulders as he took hold of the gleaming, terrible blade. The quiet, profound unfolding of creation had reached a critical, terrifying juncture on the precipice of a violent, universe-altering act. The universe held its breath, a profound, hushed anticipation settling over the nascent cosmos. Cronus, now armed with the formidable adamantine sickle, awaited the opportune moment. Gaia, the grieving and enraged Earth, knew her celestial husband's habits intimately. Each evening, as Hemera, the day, began to recede, and Nyx, the night, prepared to spread her vast dark mantle across the heavens, Uranus would descend. He would descend from his lofty celestial abode to embrace Gaia, to cover her completely, seeking comfort and procreation in her fertile depths. This embrace, once a symbol of cosmic harmony, had become an act of suffocating tyranny for Gaia, and it was this very act that would be Uranus's undoing. Imagine the slow transition of light. Hemera's radiant presence, which had illuminated the emerging landscape of Gaia, began its deliberate withdrawal, fading gradually like the last embers of a dying fire. The luminous air of ether softened, giving way to the deepening indigo of twilight. Then, Nyx, the primordial night, began her silent, majestic ascent, her boundless cloak of deepest darkness stretching across the vast expanse, enveloping the world in a profound, hushed gloom. It was during this twilight, this liminal space between day and night, that Uranus would descend. He would stretch himself across Gaia, his immense celestial body pressing down upon her, covering every mountain peak, every nascent plain, every winding river. His embrace was total, suffocating, binding the earth beneath his oppressive weight. This was the moment Cronus had been waiting for, the moment when Uranus was most vulnerable, entangled in his own possessive desire. Cronus, having concealed himself in a hidden recess or a deep shadowed ravine within Gaia's own form, prepared himself. The adamantine sickle, forged from the very essence of the earth, felt cold and heavy in his colossal hand, a promise of impending doom. There was no sound, only the immense, cosmic creak of Uranus settling into his customary embrace, the faint primal rustle of the vast sky meeting the sprawling earth. The world itself was a silent conspirator in this cosmic ambush. Then, with a sudden, decisive movement, born of ambition and his mother's urging, Cronus sprang forth. His immense strength, honed by his Titan heritage, was channeled into a single brutal act. He seized Uranus, holding him fast, and with the adamant sickle, he performed the terrible deed. Imagine the sound, if such a sound could be truly heard in the primordial silence, a sound that was perhaps more of a cosmic tearing, a rent in the very fabric of existence. The sharp, impossibly keen edge of the adamantine blade sliced through the celestial flesh of Uranus. It was a violent, universe-altering act, an unparalleled moment of cosmic horror and revolution. With that single, decisive blow, Uranus was severed. His immense form recoiled, arching upwards in agony, tearing himself away from Gaia. And in that moment, the eternal, oppressive embrace was broken. The sky, which had pressed down upon the earth, was suddenly and violently separated. This was not merely a physical separation, but a fundamental reordering of the cosmos. The earth and sky, once perpetually entwined, now held a distinct, immeasurable distance between them. The immediate cosmic consequence was profound. The heavens, once an unbroken canopy, now bore the mark of Uranus's agony. The air, which had been thick with his presence, now felt vast and empty. As Uranus recoiled and withdrew, a rain of his lifeblood, potent and primordial, began to fall. These weren't mere drops of mortal blood. They were spurts of radiant, divine ichor, glowing with an otherworldly light, imbued with the raw, generative power of the primordial sky. These incandescent drops of Uranus's blood splattered across the vast, fertile surface of Gaia. Imagine the sizzling impact, the profound absorption of this celestial essence by the Earth Mother. Each drop was a seed, a spark of life and fury, destined to bring forth a new, fearsome generation. From the first droplets of Uranus's blood that seeped into Gaia's depths, three formidable and terrifying entities sprang forth. These were the Erinyes, also known as the Furies. Imagine them rising from the very ground, not as fully formed beings, but as a coalescing of righteous indignation and vengeful primordial energy. They were powerful, ancient goddesses, not born from love or desire, but from suffering, rage, and the profound injustice of a father being overthrown by his son. The Erinyes were figures of chilling aspect, often depicted with snakes for hair, fiery eyes, and leathery, bat-like wings. Their skin might have been the color of dried blood or bruised earth. They carried whips and torches, instruments of eternal torment. Their purpose was singular and relentless: to pursue and punish those who committed patricide, matricide, or violated sacred oaths, driving them to madness with their ceaseless pursuit and agonizing cries. They embodied vengeance, guilt, and the inexorable moral order of the universe, ensuring that no grave sin, particularly against family, would go unpunished. Their very presence instilled a deep, primal fear, a chill that seeped into the bones of any who considered violating the natural order. They were the living embodiment of cosmic retribution, a stark reminder of the gravity of Cronus's act. But the blood of Uranus, falling upon Gaia, also gave rise to other beings of colossal scale. From the more concentrated pools or splashes of his divine ichor, the mighty giants began to stir. Imagine them erupting from the very plains and mountainsides of Gaia, colossal beings of immense strength, their forms hewn from earth and rock, yet possessing the divine essence of Uranus. They were enormous, powerful warriors, destined to play a significant role in future cosmic conflicts. Their skin might have been like rough bark or volcanic stone, their hair like wild, tangled roots. They were born with a thirst for battle, immense, untamed forces of nature, forever bound by their lineage to both earth and sky, and imbued with a deep-seated antagonism towards the celestial powers that would eventually emerge. And finally, from the gentler, more diffused drops of Uranus's blood, those that perhaps fell upon blossoming trees or fertile groves, arose the Malaya, the ash tree nymphs. Imagine them as graceful, ethereal figures, their forms intertwined with the very trees from which they sprang. Their skin might have been the color of ash wood, their hair like delicate leaves, their eyes reflecting the dappled light of ancient forests. They were dryads, tree spirits, born to inhabit and protect the ash trees, which were particularly significant as the wood for spears and weapons. The Malaya were nurturing, gentle, yet possessed a quiet strength, embodying the life that could emerge even from cosmic violence. They would bring forth humanity, another profound consequence of Uranus's castration. So, from the violence and agony of Uranus's castration, the universe gained not only a physical separation of earth and sky, but also a new complex tapestry of powerful beings. The Erinyes, the giants, and the Malaya, each a direct, potent consequence of that singular, universe-shattering act. The cosmos was rapidly expanding, filling with forces of both vengeance and life, forever changed by the terrible deed enacted by Cronus at his mother's behest. The primordial era, raw and untamed, was now truly defined by the consequences of this first great rebellion, while the fertile earth, Gaia, bore new, formidable beings from the celestial blood of Uranus. Another, equally profound, and perhaps even more wondrous birth was taking place far away, in the boundless, restless expanse of the primordial sea. For when Cronus had performed the terrible deed, severing Uranus, the cosmic organs had not fallen upon the land, but had instead been hurled by Cronus into the vast, churning waters of Pontus, the primordial sea. Imagine the sheer divine potency of Uranus's essence, imbued with the very fabric of the celestial realm, sinking into the deep, dark, salty embrace of Pontus. As these sacred, powerful remnants drifted upon the ancient currents, they began to mingle and dissolve, not in a destructive way, but in a profound act of elemental fusion. The divine ichor, the luminous, life-giving fluid of the sky god, mixed with the boundless, generative power of the sea. Over an immense, unhurried span of time, a delicate, ethereal foam began to form upon the surface of the waves. Picture this foam not as the transient, fleeting bubbles we see on a shoreline, but as a vast, incandescent froth, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. It was a cosmic effervescence, a shimmering, pearlescent accumulation of divine energy and salty essence, spreading slowly across the tranquil yet immensely powerful surface of Pontus. This luminous foam, this aphros, as the Greeks called it, slowly, miraculously, began to coalesce. Within its shimmering depths, a form began to take shape. Not abruptly, not with a sudden burst, but with an agonizingly beautiful, gradual unfolding. Imagine the slow, gentle curves of a body emerging, almost imperceptibly, from the frothing light. First, a delicate outline, then the soft, luminous skin, the graceful limbs, the flowing hair, all sculpted by the unseen hands of cosmic forces. This was the birth of Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation. She emerged fully grown, radiant and exquisitely beautiful, from the very heart of this sea foam. Picture her as she first lifted herself from the shimmering, iridescent surface, her form imbued with a breathtaking, unearthly glow. The primeval air around her would have shimmered with her beauty, the very light of the nascent cosmos bending to her in allure. Her eyes, perhaps the color of the deep, clear sea, would have opened to behold the newly separated sky and earth, filled with a serene, profound understanding of her own inherent power. She stood, or perhaps floated gently, upon a vast, pearlescent scallop shell, carried by the gentle, rhythmic currents of Pontus. The sea itself seemed to hush, its restless waves becoming a calm, cradling embrace as she began her slow, majestic journey across the waters. Imagine the vast, empty ocean stretching before her, their surface like polished obsidian, reflecting the nascent light of the heavens. The only sound would have been the soft, almost imperceptible lapping of the water against her shell, a rhythmic lullaby accompanying her across the limitless expanse. Her destination was uncertain at first, simply guided by the currents and the unfolding cosmic will. She drifted for an immeasurable period, a lone, luminous figure on the vast primeval sea. The soft sea breezes, perhaps the very breath of Pontus himself, would have gently caressed her skin, and the distant, unseen horizons would have stretched endlessly before her. This was not a hurried journey, but a slow, deliberate passage, allowing her divine essence to fully settle into her form, allowing the universe itself to prepare for the arrival of such a potent force. Eventually, after this long, tranquil voyage, the currents guided her towards the shores of either Cyprus or Cythera, two islands that would forever be associated with her sacred presence. Imagine the shell, gently nudging against the ancient rocky coastlines, the first touch of the divine upon solid ground. As she stepped ashore, the land itself would have blossomed around her, flowers bursting forth in vibrant hues where her delicate feet touched the soil. The air suddenly filled with the sweet, intoxicating scent of nascent life and burgeoning beauty. She was immediately attended by deities born alongside her, or perhaps drawn to her irresistible aura. The Horai, the Hours, goddesses of the seasons and natural order, and the Charities, the Graces, goddesses of charm, beauty, and fertility, would have been among the first to greet her, clothing her in fine garments and adorning her with precious jewels. These attendant deities recognized her profound significance, acknowledging the immense power of love and beauty she embodied. Aphrodite's birth was a stark contrast to the violence and agony that characterized the creation of the Erinyes and the giants. Where Uranus's blood on land brought forth vengeance and conflict, his essence in the sea yielded pure, irresistible beauty and the compelling force of love. This duality highlighted the complex, often contradictory, nature of creation in the primordial Greek cosmos. From the most brutal act, the most sublime force could emerge, a testament to the generative power inherent in the very fabric of existence, even in its most violent manifestations. Her arrival heralded a new dimension to the universe. While Eros was the primal urge for connection, Aphrodite was the embodiment of beauty, attraction, and the allure that drew beings together. She brought with her the capacity for intense pleasure, for passionate desire, and for the blossoming of life in all its sensual forms. She represented the power of enchantment, the subtle yet overwhelming force that could sway minds and hearts, shaping destinies with a mere glance. The primordial world was now not only defined by earth, sky, and sea, by night and day, by vengeance and raw strength, but also by the exquisite, irresistible force of beauty and love. The violent act of Uranus's castration had, in a cosmic paradox, given rise to the very essence of attraction, ensuring that despite the discord, the universe would continue its perpetual cycle of creation and proliferation, forever influenced by the serene, yet immensely powerful, presence of the sea-born goddess. The stage of the cosmos was becoming more crowded, more complex, and more filled with forces that would shape the destinies of all who followed. With Uranus violently separated from Gaia, his tyrannical reign brought to a definitive end by the adamantine sickle of Cronus, a new cosmic order began to establish itself. Cronus, the youngest yet most ambitious of the Titans, now ascended to supreme power, taking the throne of the heavens. His Titan siblings, who had aided or acquiesced in the overthrow of their father, now recognized his authority. The primordial earth, no longer crushed by Uranus's oppressive embrace, could finally breathe, and for a time, a period of relative peace and prosperity settled upon the nascent world. This era, under the initial reign of Cronus, is often referred to in the myths as the Golden Age. Imagine a world steeped in a gentle, pervasive calm. The very air would have felt lighter, less heavy with the tension of Uranus's fear and Gaia's suffering. Under Cronus's early rule, the universe was said to be a place of idyllic harmony, untouched by the strife and complexities that would later plague existence. There was an abundant, effortless generosity from the earth itself. The fields yielded their fruits and grains without the need for arduous toil. Rivers flowed with milk and honey, a testament to the earth's unchecked fertility. The seasons, if they existed in a form we would recognize, were perpetually mild, an eternal spring or a gentle autumn. There were no harsh winters, no scorching summers, only a benevolent climate that nurtured life without struggle. Creatures lived in harmony, predator and prey, not yet defined by the sharp edges of hunger or fear. Mortality itself was different. Beings lived for incredibly long spans, dying peacefully in their sleep, as if simply fading back into the gentle embrace of the earth. There was no sickness, no pain, no sorrow that lingered. Justice, embodied by the Titaness Themis, held sway, ensuring that disputes were rare and easily resolved. It was an age of innocence, simplicity, and unburdened existence. The Titans, in their colossal forms, watched over this burgeoning world, their vast powers now directed towards maintaining this newfound tranquility. Cronus, for a time, was a benevolent ruler, presiding over an era of unprecedented ease and plenty. The echoes of the violence that brought him to power seemed to recede into the cosmic background, replaced by a soft, harmonious hum of existence. However, beneath this veneer of cosmic peace, the seeds of future discord had already been sown. Uranus, in his dying agony, had pronounced a terrible prophecy upon Cronus. He foretold that just as Cronus had overthrown his own father, so too would he be overthrown by one of his own children. Gaia, who had aided Cronus, also reinforced this chilling prediction, for she held ancient knowledge of destiny. This prophecy, a whispered curse from the dethroned sky, began to fester in Cronus's mind, slowly, insidiously, like a venomous chill seeping into the warmth of the Golden Age. Cronus, having witnessed firsthand the brutal efficiency of patricide, found himself falling prey to the very paranoia that had consumed his father. The memory of the adamantine sickle, the feel of Uranus's celestial ichor on his hands, lingered, a constant reminder of how power could be seized, and how it could be lost. The fear that haunted Uranus now became Cronus's own tormentor, twisting his perception of his own offspring. The idyllic beauty of his reign began to dim under the shadow of this encroaching dread. To secure his lineage and ensure the continuation of the Titan's rule, Cronus took his sister, Rhea, as his consort. Rhea, the Titaness of fertility, motherhood, and the wild earth, was a magnificent and nurturing being, destined to bear many children. Their union was expected to cement the new cosmic order, to bring forth a powerful generation that would solidify the Titan's dominion. And so, Rhea began to bear children to Cronus. First came Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and home, a quiet and gentle spirit. Imagine Rhea's immense joy, the warmth of new life stirring within her, the promise of a glorious future embodied in her firstborn. But this joy was short-lived, swiftly followed by an act of unimaginable horror. Cronus, consumed by the gnawing fear of the prophecy, approached Rhea as she cradled their newborn Hestia. His eyes, once reflecting the golden light of his age, were now clouded with suspicion and dread. With a chilling resolve, he snatched the infant from Rhea's loving arms. Imagine Rhea's gasp, her immediate maternal instinct to protect, frozen by the terrible, resolute power of her husband. And then, before her wide eyes, Cronus swallowed Hestia whole, not devoured in a destructive, messy way, but swallowed as if she were a mere morsel, consumed by his colossal maw, sent into the depths of his being. The act was swift, silent, and utterly brutal. Hestia vanished, absorbed into the dark interior of her father, her potential light extinguished before it could even begin to shine. Rhea's anguish was profound. Imagine the silent scream that tore through her, unheard in the vastness of the cosmos. Her heart, overflowing with maternal love, was instantly shattered. The warmth of creation turned to an icy despair. Yet she was powerless. Cronus's strength was absolute, his will unbending in the grip of his paranoia. She could only watch, weep, and endure the unspeakable horror of seeing her child consumed by its own father. Soon after, Rhea conceived and gave birth again. This time, it was Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and harvest. Once more, Rhea experienced the fleeting joy of motherhood, the brief, precious moments of holding her child. And once more, Cronus, ever vigilant, ever fearful, descended upon them. He seized Demeter from Rhea's embrace and, with the same chilling determination, swallowed her whole, just as he had Hestia. The pattern was set, a cycle of monstrous consumption driven by a father's fear of his own progeny. Rhea's sorrow deepened, a vast, echoing emptiness growing within her with each lost child. Imagine the profound despair, the feeling of utter helplessness as she witnessed the same horror unfold again and again. Her womb, a source of life and hope, had become a chamber of doom. And her husband, the king of the cosmos, was a voracious, insatiable monster. Next came Hera, the goddess of marriage and women, a powerful and regal child. Then Hades, the future lord of the underworld, a solemn and formidable son. And finally, Poseidon, the future god of the sea, a restless and mighty force. Each time, with every birth, Rhea was forced to endure the same agonizing ritual. The joy of new life, the immense love of a mother, immediately followed by the chilling act of Cronus swallowing her beloved offspring. Imagine Rhea, a titaness of immense power, reduced to a weeping, grieving mother, her colossal form trembling with suppressed rage and sorrow. She would have cried out to Gaia, her own mother, for solace, for intervention, but Cronus's dominion was absolute. 5 times she bore children, and 5 times she watched them disappear into the abyssal depths of Cronus's belly, their lives suspended, their futures stolen by a father's paranoid fear. The Golden Age, once so serene, was now stained with the unspeakable tragedy of a mother's unending loss and a father's tyrannical cruelty. The stage was set, not for peace, but for an inevitable cosmic reckoning. The silence that followed Cronus's 5th monstrous act was not one of peace, but of profound, suffocating despair. Rhea, the great titaness of motherhood, was utterly broken. 5 of her beloved children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, had been torn from her embrace and swallowed whole by their own father, imprisoned within his abyssal interior. Her maternal heart, vast as the earth she represented, was a cavern of echoing sorrow, a raw wound that would not heal. Her colossal form, once vibrant with fertility, now trembled with suppressed grief and a simmering, desperate rage. She could no longer bear it. The thought of bearing another child, only to have it disappear into the insatiable maw of Cronus, was a torment worse than any Tartarian gloom. She knew that her husband's paranoia, fueled by Uranus's dying prophecy, would never cease. He would continue this horrific cycle until he had consumed every potential threat, until his fear had utterly devoured his lineage. In her profound anguish, Rhea turned to the most ancient powers, to those who had seen the beginning of all things and knew the intricate threads of destiny. She cried out, not in audible shouts that would alarm Cronus, but in a deep, resonant plea that vibrated through the very bedrock of the earth. Reaching her mother, Gaia, the primordial earth, and even her dethroned father, Uranus, the sky, who now dwelled in a detached, ethereal suffering. Gaia, who had also suffered the pain of imprisoned children and Uranus's tyranny, felt Rhea's anguish deeply. She knew the agony of a mother's loss. Uranus, too, from his distant celestial realm, recognized the chilling echo of his own tyrannical fears in Cronus's actions. Together, these primordial deities, ancient and wise, heard Rhea's desperate plea. They understood the cosmic imperative to break this cycle of consumption and fear. They offered Rhea counsel, a secret plan to thwart Cronus's cruel destiny. They advised her that her next child, if she were to bear one, must be saved, hidden from the devouring father, nurtured in secret, and raised to become the one who would finally bring an end to Cronus's oppressive reign. This child, they foretold, was destined to be a king greater than his father, greater than his grandfather, and would establish a new, more just cosmic order. With renewed hope, fragile yet fiercely burning, Rhea prepared for her 6th confinement. She journeyed to a place of profound antiquity and wildness, an island sacred to the Earth Mother herself, a place shrouded in mists and ancient forests, the island of Crete. This was a land of rugged mountains, deep caves and fertile valleys, a perfect sanctuary for a secret birth. Imagine Rhea, immense and heavy with child, making her way across the primordial seas, perhaps guided by the quiet currents of Oceanus and Tethys, or veiled by the deep shadows of Nyx. She sought refuge in the heart of Crete, choosing a secluded cave, either the Dictaean cave or the Idaean cave. both places of profound natural power and hidden depths. These caves were not mere openings in the rock. They were sacred wombs of the earth, echoing with the ancient energies of Gaia. Within the cool, damp embrace of this hidden grotto, surrounded by the silence of ancient stone and the murmuring of subterranean springs, Rhea gave birth to her sixth child. This child, destined to shake the foundations of the cosmos, was Zeus. Imagine him as a perfectly formed infant, but already radiating an inherent power, a nascent light that seemed to banish the cave's gloom. He was born without fanfare, without the thunderous pronouncements befitting a future king, but in the deepest secrecy, a whispered promise of revolution. Rhea's heart swelled with a fierce, protective love, mixed with profound relief and a terrible resolve. This child, her beautiful, powerful son, would not suffer the fate of his siblings. She knew she could not keep him herself, for Cronus' gaze, though paranoid, was ever watchful. The secret had to be absolute. To ensure Zeus' safety, Rhea entrusted him to the care of various nymphs and divine protectors. The nymphs Amalthea and Adrastea were among his primary caretakers. Imagine them, gentle yet vigilant, nurturing the infant Zeus with the utmost devotion. Amalthea, often depicted as a goat or a nymph who owned a miraculous goat, provided him with nourishing milk. Picture the young Zeus suckling at the udder of a divine goat, drawing strength and sustenance from this ancient, sacred creature. The milk was said to be ambrosial, imbued with divine vitality, granting him immense power as he grew. Adrastea, another nymph, was said to lull him with soothing sounds and care for his every need. To further conceal Zeus and mask his infant cries from Cronus, Rhea also enlisted the aid of the Curetes. These were a group of armed, youthful attendants or demigods, often associated with wild, rhythmic dances and martial displays. Imagine them positioned outside the cave, their bronze spears clashing against their shields in a wild, raucous dance whenever the infant Zeus let out a cry. The deafening clamor of their weapons and their shouts would effectively drown out any sound, preventing Cronus from hearing the telltale wails of his newest child. The air around the cave would vibrate with this rhythmic, metallic clangor, a shield of sound protecting the future king. Meanwhile, Rhea had to return to Cronus. She had to maintain the deception, to convince her husband that the prophecy was being fulfilled, that his tyrannical cycle remained unbroken. With a heavy heart, but a resolute spirit, she went to her mother, Gaia, for assistance in this crucial deception. Gaia, ever the accomplice to cosmic revolution, provided Rhea with a large, heavy stone. Imagine a rough, ancient boulder, perhaps gray and worn, but substantial in its weight. Rhea then took this stone and carefully wrapped it in swaddling clothes, just as she would have swaddled a newborn infant. She meticulously arranged the cloth to mimic the soft, vulnerable form of a baby, creating a convincing, yet empty, package. With this swaddled stone, Rhea returned to Cronus. Her heart must have pounded with a mixture of fear and defiance. Cronus, in his insatiable paranoia, demanded the newborn. Rhea, feigning sorrow and resignation, presented him with the carefully disguised stone. Cronus, blinded by his fear, and perhaps dulled by the repetitive nature of his monstrous act, did not inspect the bundle closely. He took the swaddled stone from Rhea's trembling hands. Imagine the immense, cold weight of the stone, contrasting starkly with the softness of infant flesh. Yet Cronus, in his haste and self-absorption, paid it no mind. With a final grim flourish of his tyrannical power, he swallowed the stone whole. It slid down his throat, a hard, indigestible mass, settling deep within his belly alongside his imprisoned children. Cronus believed he had once again cheated fate. He believed the prophecy was averted, that his dominion was secure, having consumed his sixth child, just as he had the 5 before. The weight in his stomach, the hard, inert presence of the stone, felt like another victory, another confirmation of his supreme power. He did not know that deep within the hidden caves of Crete, the true heir, Zeus was growing. Nurtured by divine milk and protected by the clangor of shields, a ticking time bomb within the heart of the Golden Age, destined to utterly shatter his tyrannical reign and reshape the very foundations of the universe. The quiet, profound unfolding of creation had given way to a silent, cunning revolution, preparing for the most titanic struggle the cosmos had yet seen. Deep within the hidden, cool embrace of the Cretan caves, shielded from the all-seeing eye of Cronus, the infant Zeus thrived. Nurtured by the ambrosial milk of Amalthea, the divine goat, and tenderly cared for by nymphs like Adrastea, he grew with astonishing speed, his strength and power expanding exponentially with each passing day. The rhythmic clangor of the Caretes' spears against their shields, once a protective shroud for his infant cries, now echoed with a growing resonance, a subtle prelude to the thunder he would one day command. Imagine the slow, majestic progression of his growth. He was not a mortal child, bound by human limitations of time. Days folded into weeks, weeks into months, and months into what would be years for lesser beings. Yet for Zeus, it was a rapid, powerful maturation. His eyes, initially wide with infant curiosity, deepened into a gaze of piercing intelligence and burgeoning authority. His limbs, once soft and dependent, hardened into the powerful physique of a colossal youth, brimming with latent celestial energy. The very air around him in the cave seemed to vibrate with his developing might, a quiet hum of contained power. As Zeus reached the cusp of adulthood, his heart filled with the stories whispered by his caretakers and reinforced by the ancient wisdom of Gaia. He learned of his true parentage, Rhea, his sorrowful mother, and Cronus, his tyrannical father. He learned of his 5 elder siblings, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, imprisoned within Cronus's belly, their lives suspended in an agonizing cosmic limbo. A profound sense of injustice, mingled with a fierce, unwavering determination, solidified within him. The prophecy of Ouranos, that Cronus would be overthrown by his own child, became not a burden, but a driving purpose. The time for secrecy and seclusion was drawing to a close. Zeus knew he could no longer remain hidden. The cosmos awaited its rightful king, and his siblings awaited their liberation. He prepared to leave the safety of Crete, to face the very titan who had sought to erase him from existence. His journey from Crete to the seat of Cronus's power would have been shrouded in a deliberate quietude, a stealthy movement guided by the ancient winds and veiled by the subtle influences of Nyx. He approached his father's domain not with overt aggression, but with the cunning and foresight that marked his burgeoning intellect. To achieve his goal, Zeus needed assistance, and he knew he could not confront Cronus directly in battle just yet. He sought out Metis, the titaness of counsel, prudence, and cunning intelligence. Metis was the embodiment of wise planning and strategic thought, often depicted as a beautiful and wise figure. She was the first wife of Zeus in later myths, but here, she was his invaluable ally, a strategist whose wisdom could outwit even the cunning Cronus. Imagine their meeting, perhaps in a quiet grove or on a mist-shrouded peak, far from Cronus's watchful gaze. Zeus, in his youthful, formidable prime, would have presented his plan, his righteous indignation clear in his voice. Metis, with her deep understanding of cosmic dynamics and Cronus's character, listened intently. She understood the gravity of the situation, the necessity of freeing the imprisoned gods, and the cosmic balance that needed to be restored. Metis devised a subtle, ingenious plan. She knew that brute force would be insufficient against Cronus, who possessed immense strength and the adamantine sickle. Instead, cunning was required. She would provide Zeus with a powerful emetic, a potion designed to force Cronus to regurgitate what he had swallowed. Imagine the preparation of this potion. It wouldn't be a simple brew, but a concoction of primordial herbs, divine essences, and perhaps even a touch of Gaia's own earth power, all carefully mixed and imbued with Metis's formidable intellect. The potion would be potent, designed to work against the divine physiology of a titan, triggering a powerful, uncontrollable expulsion from within Cronus's vast interior. Its scent, if it had one, might have been strangely sweet yet acrid, a scent of cosmic disruption. Zeus, armed with this potent emetic and guided by Metis' strategic brilliance, returned to Cronus' presence. The exact circumstances vary slightly across different accounts, but the essence remains the same. Zeus had to gain access to Cronus, perhaps by posing as a cupbearer or by simply appearing before him with an air of subservience that masked his true intentions. Cronus, perhaps complacent in his perceived victory over the prophecy, was simply recognizing the divine aura of his powerful, unknown son, allowed Zeus into his inner circle. With a heart filled with grim determination, Zeus administered the emetic to Cronus. Perhaps he mixed it into Cronus' drink, a draught of intoxicating nectar, or presented it as a special offering. Imagine Cronus, unsuspecting, consuming the potion. It would have worked swiftly and powerfully, its divine properties beginning to churn within his colossal belly. A profound discomfort would have begun to spread through Cronus. Not the familiar weight of the stone and his children, but a sudden, violent upheaval, a churning in his primordial gut. His vast body would have heaved, his strength momentarily overcome by the irresistible force of the emetic. And then, with a colossal, wrenching spasm, Cronus began to regurgitate his children. Imagine the sheer, raw force of this expulsion, a sound that would echo across the primordial world, a retching that shook the very mountains. First came the stone he had swallowed, a hard, inert mass, expelled with violent force. It would later be set up at Delphi as a sacred marker, a testament to Cronus' deception and the beginning of a new age. Then, one by one, Cronus coughed up his true offspring. Imagine them emerging, not as infants, but as fully grown, powerful deities, having matured within the dark, abyssal confines of their father's belly. They were pale, perhaps from their long imprisonment in the gloom, but vibrant with a renewed sense of life and an intense, burning fury. First, Hestia reappeared, then Demeter, then Hera. Each emerged whole, radiant with their inherent divine power, their eyes slowly adjusting to the light of the nascent world, their forms immense and awe-inspiring. They would have looked upon their father, the one who had imprisoned them, with a mixture of terror and a profound, nascent rage. Finally, the formidable sons emerged, Hades and Poseidon. They too were fully formed, powerful, their presence immediately commanding. Imagine their expressions as they realized their predicament. The long, dark years of suspended animation within their fathers, gut now, abruptly ended. A chilling realization of their father's monstrousness would have settled upon them. The sight must have been awe-inspiring and terrifying. 6 powerful gods and goddesses, now free, standing before their monstrous father, who was still reeling from the violent expulsion. Their freedom marked the immediate end of Cronus' unchallenged tyranny and the beginning of a new, formidable alliance. Zeus, their younger brother, who had engineered their liberation, immediately stepped forward. A profound bond of kinship, forged in their shared ordeal and his act of salvation, instantly united them. There was no need for introductions, no explanation. They were family, and they were allies. The 6 liberated Olympians, Zeus, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon now stood together, a formidable new force in the cosmos. Their combined presence radiated immense power, a challenge that Cronus, still weakened and bewildered by the emetic, could not ignore. The quiet, cunning revolution had come to a head, and the stage was now set for the most monumental conflict the universe had yet witnessed. The Titanomachi, the epic war between the generations of gods that would determine the ultimate fate of the cosmos. The air, which had once trembled with Cronus' tyranny, now crackled with the raw, untamed energy of impending battle. The air, which had once trembled with Cronus' tyranny, now truly crackled with the raw, untamed energy of impending battle. The 6 liberated Olympians, Zeus, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon stood united, their youthful power radiating a formidable challenge that permeated the cosmos. Cronus, the deposed king, still reeling from the violent expulsion of his children and the bitter taste of betrayal, watched with a mixture of shock, rage, and a dawning, terrifying realization of the prophecy's fulfillment. The era of the Titans' unchallenged dominion was now definitively over. Zeus, recognized as the leader and savior by his siblings, understood that immense power alone would not guarantee victory against the established might of the Titans. He knew that strategic alliances and formidable weaponry would be crucial. His first thoughts, guided by the wisdom of Gaia and Metis, turned to those who had suffered under Uranus' tyranny, those imprisoned in the deepest darkness of Tartarus, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires. Imagine Zeus and his siblings, their colossal forms moving with purpose, journeying to the edge of the known world, to the very precipice of Tartarus. The descent would have been arduous, a passage through ever-deepening gloom and oppressive silence. The air grew heavy, thick with the despair and ancient confinement that seeped from the abyssal pit. They would have felt the immense pressure of the earth above them, the silent echoes of geological ages. Upon reaching the entrance to Tartarus, a realm of bronze gates and unyielding darkness, Zeus used his burgeoning power to shatter the ancient bonds that Uranus had placed upon his monstrous children. With a mighty crackle of celestial energy, the gates groaned open, releasing a flood of primal darkness and an ancient, confined power. From the oppressive gloom, slowly, ponderously, emerged the three Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges. Their single gleaming eyes, long accustomed to the absolute darkness of their prison, would have blinked in the faint, nascent light of the outer world. Imagine their immense, rock-hewn bodies, atrophied but not weakened by their long confinement, now stretching, flexing their powerful muscles. Their voices, rumbling like distant subterranean tremors, would have been filled with the deep, echoing resentment of eons spent in chains. They beheld Zeus and his siblings, and a flicker of recognition, perhaps even a spark of ancient hope, ignited in their singular eyes. They sensed the divine power of these young gods, and understood that their liberation was a direct challenge to the old order. Grateful for their freedom and eager for vengeance against the line of Uranus that had imprisoned them, the Cyclopes immediately pledged their allegiance to Zeus. As mastersmiths of unparalleled skill, even in their primordial state, the Cyclopes immediately set to work. Their immense hands, accustomed to shaping mountains and wielding elemental forces, now began to forge weapons of divine power for their liberators. Imagine their cavernous workshop, perhaps deep within the earth or in the belly of a mountain, glowing with the heat of divine fires. The air would have shimmered with the intense heat, the rhythmic clang of colossal hammers against celestial metals echoing for miles. For Zeus, they forged the thunderbolt, a weapon of unimaginable power. Picture its creation, raw lightning captured and bound, encased in celestial bronze, crackling with untamed energy, its very essence capable of splitting mountains and igniting the skies. The air would hum with its potential, sparks flying as it took shape. For Poseidon, they crafted the mighty trident, a three-pronged spear capable of stirring the seas, shaking the earth, and splitting rocks. Imagine its prongs, sharp and gleaming, imbued with the restless power of the oceans, ready to command the waves and tremors. And for Hades, they fashioned the helm of darkness, a cap of invisibility, woven from shadow and night, capable of rendering its wearer unseen to gods and mortals alike. Imagine its surface absorbing all light, a cloak of absolute stealth and unseen power. These weapons, forged in gratitude and vengeance, were destined to play pivotal roles in the coming conflict. Following the Cyclopes, with even greater ponderousness and a more profound rumble, emerged the three Hecatonchires, Briareus, Cottus, and Gyges. Their 50 heads, each with its own fearsome expression, swiveled slowly, taking in the world they had been denied for so long. Their 100 hands, gnarled and powerful, stretched and flexed, each joint a crack of thunder. Their colossal bodies, like living mountain ranges, rose from the depths, casting immense shadows. The Hecatonchires, too, were filled with an ancient, burning hatred for Uranus and, by extension, for Cronus, who had upheld their imprisonment. They were beings of raw, untamed force, and they immediately allied themselves with Zeus and his siblings. Their loyalty was absolute, their strength immeasurable, and their presence alone was enough to inspire awe and terror. Their 100 hands, each capable of wielding immense boulders, would be a terrifying force on the battlefield, capable of raining down a ceaseless barrage of destruction. While Zeus was securing these powerful allies, the rest of the cosmos was not idle. The Titans, under the nominal leadership of Cronus, gathered their forces. Many of the original Titans, the siblings of Cronus, sided with him, either out of loyalty, fear, or a desire to maintain the established order. Oceanus, true to his neutral and encircling nature, largely abstained from the direct conflict, remaining on the sidelines. However, some Titans, seeing the injustice of Cronus's reign or foreseeing the inevitable shift in power, chose to side with the younger generation. Among these crucial Titan allies for the Olympians were Themis, the Titaness of divine law and justice, and her son, Prometheus, the Titan of foresight and cunning intellect. Themis, with her profound understanding of cosmic order, recognized the inherent injustice of Cronus's rule and foresaw the triumph of Zeus. Prometheus, ever astute and insightful, likewise understood that the future lay with Zeus and his siblings. Their defection was a significant blow to Cronus's cause, depriving him of both wisdom and strategic thinking. Prometheus, in particular, would prove invaluable with his cleverness and ability to anticipate events. Thus, the sides were drawn. On one side stood the Olympians, the young gods led by Zeus, empowered by the thunderbolt, trident, and helm of darkness, and bolstered by the colossal might of the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, along with the strategic council of Metis, Themis, and Prometheus. Their base of operations would become Mount Olympus, a majestic, towering peak that scraped the very heavens, a symbolic declaration of their eventual dominion. On the opposing side stood the Titans, the elder generation, led by Cronus, still wielding his formidable adamant sickle. With him were the other Titan brothers, Cus, Crius, Hyperion, and Iapetus, along with the Titanesses Dea, Phoebe, Tethys, and Mnemosyne. Their stronghold was Mount Othrys, a grand imposing peak that faced Mount Olympus, a dark counterpoint to the Olympians' shining citadel. The entire universe became the stage for this impending cataclysm. The very air grew heavy with anticipation, the primordial winds whispering of war. The cosmic balance hung precariously, poised on the brink of an upheaval, unlike anything seen since the birth of chaos itself. The tension was palpable, a deep, resonant hum preceding the thunderous clash that was about to unfold. The Titanomachi, the great war of the gods and titans, was not a swift or decisive conflict. It was an epic, drawn-out struggle, destined to rage for 10 long years. Imagine a war fought not just on battlefields, but across the entire face of the nascent cosmos. The heavens themselves would become a theater of conflict. The earth would tremble, and the seas would boil. The very first clashes would have been immense, earth-shattering events. The Titans, with their raw, untamed power, would have surged against the younger gods, their colossal forms clashing with the force of colliding mountains. Cronus, wielding his adamantine sickle, would have been a terrifying figure, his rage fueled by betrayal and the memory of his own father's demise. But the Olympians, though younger, possessed potent new weapons and strategic minds. Zeus, from his perch on Mount Olympus, would have unleashed his newly forged thunderbolts, bolts of pure, crackling energy that would rip through the sky, illuminating the darkness and shaking the very foundations of the world. Imagine the blinding flashes, the deafening roars, the earth beneath them reverberating with each titanic strike. The initial skirmishes would have been a maelstrom of raw power, a chaotic ballet of divine forces struggling for supremacy, setting the tone for the long, arduous conflict to come. The cosmos held its breath, witnessing the dawn of a war that would forever redefine its destiny. The cosmos, indeed, held its breath, a vast, silent observer as the colossal forces of the Titans and the burgeoning might of the Olympians collided. The Titanomachi, This monumental war truly began with an initial deafening roar, a clash that resonated from the highest reaches of the ethereal heavens to the deepest, shuddering roots of Gaia. It was not a single battle, but a continuous grinding conflict, a maelstrom of raw, untamed power that would stretch across the very fabric of existence for 10 incredibly long, arduous years. Imagine the battlefields themselves, not confined to earthly plains, but encompassing the entire nascent universe. The sky above Mount Olympus, the Titan stronghold of Mount Othrys, the vast stretches of land between them, and even the swirling currents of the primordial ocean became arenas for this epic struggle. The air, already thick with anticipation, was now rent by the continuous crackle of divine energy, the thunderous impacts of God against Titan, and the earth-shaking footsteps of these colossal beings. From their resplendent stronghold on Mount Olympus, the young Olympian gods launched their assaults. Zeus, standing tall and formidable, his form radiating an aura of electrifying power, wielded his newly forged thunderbolts with devastating precision. Picture him, his arm arcing through the celestial expanse, unleashing bolts of pure, crackling energy. These weren't mere flashes of lightning. They were immense, incandescent spears of raw power, ripping through the very fabric of the sky with blinding intensity. Each thunderbolt would strike with a deafening, concussive roar, illuminating the swirling darkness, splitting the air with tremendous force, and causing the very mountains below to tremble and groan. The impact points would erupt in explosions of light and primordial dust, leaving scorched earth and vaporized rock in their wake. Poseidon, his newly acquired trident held aloft, stood ready to unleash the fury of the primordial seas. With a mighty sweep of his weapon, he could stir the immense waters of Pontus, causing colossal waves to surge and crash against the ancient shores, creating tidal forces that reshaped coastlines. His trammels would plunge into the earth, sending shudders and tremors through Gaia's bedrock, opening fissures and causing whole land masses to shift and groan under the strain. Imagine the distant rumble of the ocean, a low, guttural growl that accompanied his every strike, the very world responding to his elemental commands. Hades, cloaked in the shadows of his helm of darkness, moved with unseen menace across the battlefield. His presence was one of chilling silence, an unseen threat that instilled dread even in the mighty Titans. He would pass through their lines like a phantom, his unseen strikes sowing confusion and fear, his shadowy attacks weakening their resolve from within. The cold grip of unseen terror would be a constant companion for the Titan forces facing the Olympians. Arrayed against them from their imposing fortress on Mount Othrys were the Titans. Cronus, a towering figure of ancient power, his face a mask of bitter rage and defiance, wielded his formidable adamantine sickle. He swung it with ferocious intent, its impossibly sharp edge carving through the air, capable of severing any foe, a chilling reminder of his past deed. His power over time, though not fully manifested in direct combat, instilled a sense of inevitable dread in his opponents. His brothers, the other male titans, Qs, Crius, Hyperion, and Iapetus, fought with their own immense raw strength. Hyperion, the titan of light, might have attempted to blind the Olympians with searing, primal luminosity, casting disorienting glows across the chaotic battlefield. Iapetus, a force of raw, untamed power, would have charged with unbridled fury, his every blow capable of shattering mountains. Their colossal forms moved like living mountains, their fists and feet impacting with forces that reshaped the landscape, sending shock waves through the earth. The Titanesses Theia, Phoebe, Tethys, and Mnemosyne, while perhaps not engaging in direct frontline combat, would have contributed their formidable powers in other ways. Theia might have intensified the gleaming light of Hyperion, creating dazzling distractions. Phoebe, with her prophetic intellect, might have attempted to foresee Olympian strategies or offer counsel to Cronus. Tethys, with her dominion over fresh water, could have called upon torrents to flood battlefields or create mists to obscure vision. Mnemosyne, the titaness of memory, would have held the vast knowledge of ancient spells and primordial energies, perhaps whispering forgotten incantations to empower her allies. But it was the newly freed allies of Zeus that began to truly tip the scales. The three Cyclopes, Brontes, Sterops, and Arges tirelessly forged more thunderbolts for Zeus, ensuring a ceaseless barrage of cosmic lightning. Their immense hands, capable of enduring the most intense heat, continuously crafted these weapons of devastating power, maintaining Zeus' arsenal. And the Hecatonchires Briareus, Cottus, and Gyges were a truly terrifying, unstoppable force. Their 100 hands each became a living catapult, tearing massive boulders, entire chunks of mountains, from the very surface of Gaia, and hurling them with incredible speed and force towards Mount Tartarus. Imagine a ceaseless barrage of colossal projectiles, each the size of a hill, screaming through the air, impacting the Titan stronghold with earth-shattering explosions. The air would be filled with the sound of grinding stone, shattering rock, and the thudding impacts that would reshape the very peaks of Tartarus. Their 50 heads, each roaring with ancient fury, added to the terrifying cacophony of the war. The initial skirmishes of the Titanomachi were thus a maelstrom of raw power and elemental destruction. The young Olympians, though fewer in number, possessed the advantage of freshly forged, potent weapons and the strategic minds of Metis and Prometheus. The elder Titans, steeped in their ancient, untamed power, relied on brute force and the sheer weight of their collective might. The cosmic balance was profoundly disturbed, and the entire universe was caught in the terrifying, prolonged embrace of this cataclysmic conflict, a war that would decide which generation of gods would ultimately reign supreme and shape the destiny of all that was to come. The long, grinding struggle had only just begun.